After our American colleague made his decision, he ultimately decided to cancel or postpone this meeting. Rather, he is talking about postponing the meeting. Now, regarding the new sanctions. First of all, there is nothing new here. Yes, they are serious for us. That is clear. And they will have certain consequences, but overall, they will not significantly affect our economic well-being. The number of sanctions that have been imposed against the Russian Federation up to now.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has once again drawn a line in the sand. Speaking on Thursday, Putin said Russia will never bow to pressure from the United States, even as new sanctions target Moscow's energy giants Rosneft and Lukoil. He admitted, however, that these measures could cause some economic pain. The Trump administration on Wednesday imposed sweeping sanctions on Russia's two largest oil producers, Rosneft and Lukoil, along with nearly 36 subsidiaries. These steps are aimed at pressuring Moscow to negotiate an end to its war in Ukraine. The European Union has also taken action, agreeing to a phased ban on Russian liquefied natural gas imports. Speaking publicly, Putin described the U.S. sanctions as unfriendly, but insisted they would not significantly affect Russia's economic well-being. The Russian president also warned that attempts to disrupt global energy markets could lead to a surge in prices, potentially hurting countries like the United States, especially given the internal political calendar.
After our American colleague made his decision, he ultimately decided to cancel or postpone this meeting. Rather, he is talking about postponing the meeting. Now, regarding the new sanctions. First of all, there is nothing new here. Yes, they are serious for us. That is clear. And they will have certain consequences, but overall, they will not significantly affect our economic well-being. The number of sanctions that have been imposed against the Russian Federation up to now. This is, of course, an attempt to put pressure on Russia. But no self-respecting country and no self-respecting people ever make decisions under pressure. Under pressure. And undoubtedly, Russia has the privilege of feeling and considering itself among this list of self-respecting countries and peoples. It holds first place. Saudi Arabia is in second place. 10 million. Of course, this is an unfriendly act towards Russia. This is obvious. And it does not strengthen Russian-American relations, which had only just begun to recover. Of course, with such actions, the US administration is damaging Russian-American relations. Some processes will be sensitive. In this regard, the US consumes 20 million. They sell something and buy even more, mainly from Canada. So they produce 13.5 and consume 20. The Russian Federation and Saudi Arabia, they sell more. Saudi Arabia exports about 9 million tons to the foreign market, and the Russian Federation exports 7.5. That is, our contribution to the global energy balance is very significant. And now this balance has been established overall, both in the interest of consumers and producers. Disrupting this balance is quite a thing. It's a very thankless task, including for those who are trying to do it. Such decisions need to be understood. Who do they actually benefit? Of course, it is possible to replace some, though certainly not all. That's impossible. But some portion of Russian oil and petroleum products on the world market. But firstly, this takes time. Secondly, it requires significant investment. I hope this will not lead to serious changes, to sharply increase. It is not possible to do this instantly. But if the amount of our oil and petroleum products on the world market suddenly decreases, prices will rise. My American colleague and I also discussed this. What will this lead to? This will lead to a sharp increase in the cost of oil and petroleum products, including at gas stations. What truly matters to us is something else. We feel confident and stable, and despite certain losses, which of course will be connected to many different circumstances, our energy sector still feels quite secure overall.
On the diplomatic front, Putin confirmed that a summit with U.S. President Donald Trump, proposed by the White House, is being considered in Budapest. Dialogue is always better than confrontation, he said, emphasizing Moscow's support for ongoing talks with Washington.
to consider oneself among the list of self-respecting countries and peoples. Both the meeting itself, as well as its specific location, were initially proposed and suggested by the American side. And I agreed to this arrangement, but I also made sure to express my thoughts and opinions in this regard, and I said that, of course, such important meetings need to be very well prepared in advance. For both myself and the American president, it would be a significant mistake to approach this matter lightly or to leave the meeting without achieving the expected and desired result. They sell something, and in return they buy even more, which is an interesting dynamic to consider. I should say that the President of the United States agreed with this, completely agreed, and said that on their side, a whole group of officials from the current administration would be working on preparing this meeting. He named some of them, and I said that after our American colleague finalizes the list of those who will be working on preparing our meeting, we will also announce who will be working on our side, on the Russian side. But at the initial stage, without any doubt, the first steps in this direction should be taken by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, Lavrov, and Secretary of State, Rubio. About 9 million tons. The Russian Federation, 7.5. So the US president has decided to cancel or postpone this meeting. More likely, he's talking about postponing the meeting. Well, what can I say, really? Dialogue is always better than any kind of confrontation, than arguments, or especially war. That's why we have always supported this, the continuation of dialogue, and we continue to support it now.
We canceled the meeting with President Putin. It didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like we were going to get to the place we have to get, so I canceled it. But we'll do it in the future. But next week we'll be with many of you in those locations that I told you. Then it's back to Washington. So thank you very much, everybody. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, can you tell us a little bit about why you're elevating sanctions against Russia right now?
I just felt it was time. We've waited a long time. I thought that we'd go long before the Middle East. And Mark, as you know, we did the Middle East plus 7. So we did 7 different wars from Pakistan and India to so many.
Azerbaijan, Armenia.
Which they said was impossible to do. All these wars I did, and the one that we have left, we have 1 left. It'll be 9. We have 1 left, and I think we'll get that done too. I think we're on our way to getting it done.
We have to.
Please.
Mr. President, do you have a timeline for when you think this war is going to be over because of your leadership?
No, I don't have a timeline. You can't have in war, it's hard to have a timeline. You know, so many things happen in war. Go ahead.
What about Tomahawk missiles? Putin is definitely afraid.
The problem with the Tomahawk that a lot of people don't know, it'll take a minimum of 6 months, usually a year, to learn how to use them. They're highly complex. So the only way a Tomahawk is going to be shot is if we shot it, and we're not going to do that. But there is a tremendous learning curve with the Tomahawk. It's a very powerful weapon, very accurate weapon, and maybe that's what makes it so complex. But it will take a year. It takes a year of intense training to learn how to use it. And we know how to use it, and we're not going to be teaching other people. It's too far out into the future.
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, please.
I saw, Mr. President, that you said as recently as yesterday that you still believe that Putin wants to end the war.
Yeah,
and today
I do.
You took this step to ratchet the sanctions and put more pressure on him. What else are you going to do to encourage him to get there, or can you explain why you do believe he wants peace?
Yeah, it's a good question. Today is a very big day in terms of what we're doing. Look, these are tremendous sanctions. These are very big. Those are against their 2 big oil companies, and we hope that they won't be on for long. We hope that the war will be settled. We just answered having to do with the various forms of missiles and everything else that we're looking at, but we don't think that's going to be necessary. We would like to see them just take the line that has been formed over quite a long period of time and go and let's go home. Last week they had almost 8,000 soldiers killed. Many Russians were killed last week. Many Ukrainians were killed last week. We think it's ridiculous and would like to have it end.
Why do you think he wants peace, though? Why do you still believe that?
I think they want peace. I think they both want peace at this point. It's been, it's almost 4 years. You're going into 4 years. And if I were president, it never would have started.
Secretary President said that Vladimir Putin had not been honest and forthright in his talks with you. Just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about your feelings about that. And also, if I may, to Mimir Rutte, just your thoughts on whether Ukraine should get Tomahawks. Thank you.
Well, I think that in terms of honesty, the only thing I can say is every time I speak with Vladimir, I have good conversations, and then they don't go anywhere. They just don't go anywhere. So in that sense, but no, look, he's fighting a war. He's in a war. That's two very competent sides, and that's the way war is. You never know with war, but I would say that it's time to make a deal. A lot of people are dying. You know, they're not Americans, but they're people. They're souls, and they're dying by the thousands. Worst since World War II, and we really should stop it.
And to your other question,
yes. Please.
Sorry, to your other question, this has been consistent from this president when we first met again after your re-election in Mar-a-Lago in November. You said we have to stop the killing. This is close to your heart, and this is your vision. That's why this war needs to end. When it comes to Tomahawks or whatever system, it's up to individual nations to decide whatever they want to supply to Ukraine. NATO doesn't take a position, but I can assure you this. When the president called me in July and said we want to again send weapons into Ukraine, paid for by our allies, the Canadians and the Europeans, that was an important moment. And that is now taking place, and the ambassador, myself, we're working hard at this. Already a couple of $1 billion of weaponry into Ukraine from the US, paid for by allies. So I'm not going to comment on the Tomahawks, but when it comes to the US and all the support for Ukraine, it is there and it is close to the president's heart, and I know this.
I will say this, and you know, Mark can say it better than anybody. The European nations and Canada have really pulled together, and it's beyond even that. I mean, it's really beyond that.
I was with the Australians, the New Zealanders, Japan. They all.
If you want to really add them up, we could really add them up. But NATO, basically, European and Canada, and a lot of other nations, they've really band together. They are not happy about what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. They're not happy at all.
President, that the sanctions that you're announcing today will push Putin to the.
Well, I don't know that they will. I think that they'll certainly have an impact. They're massive sanctions. It's sanctions on oil. The two biggest oil companies, among the biggest in the world, but they're Russian. They do a lot of oil. And hopefully it'll push, hopefully he'll become reasonable, and hopefully Zelensky will be reasonable too. You know, it takes two to tango, as they say, and we're going to find out. They hate each other. These two people hate each other. You know that better than anybody. Yes. And it makes it more difficult than it should be. This should be easier to do. But the level of hatred between Zelensky and Putin is very substantial.
Could I add one thing? What the president is doing today with these sanctions is putting more pressure, of course, on both parties, in this case on Russia. It's all about changing the calculus, making sure that Putin understands that the president's vision this weekend of having a ceasefire, stop where they are, as you literally said, and that this has to be step one now. And for him to really accept that vision and to come to the table. And then you have to put pressure, and this is exactly what he did today.
Along with Europe. I mean, Europe, look, they've actually become friends of mine. I think all of them. Yeah. We have a very close relationship, and they want to see it end too. They really want to see it end. But I can say they're totally committed. If this went on for 10 more years, Europe is behind them. They just can't let that happen. You can't let what's been going on. Now, it should have never happened. It would have never happened if I were president. But it did happen. I inherited. This was Biden, a man who was, without question, you take a look at the new walkway, the presidential walk of fame, we call it. Biden is the worst president we've ever had, if he was even a president. The people that surrounded that desk made those decisions. But this should have never happened. It wouldn't have happened. But it did happen. I inherited it. We're going to get it ended, hopefully soon.